Welcome, John, to the podcast. Such an honor considering 5 years ago I saw his interview on YouTube and thoughts become things. Now I'm talking to him. John, thank you for coming on.
My joy, Brody. So much fun to be with you. We share a lot of similar passions and interests.
Absolutely, too. I want to start off with the question because it's a day after Halloween, and you talk a lot about Frankenstein versus Einstein's brain.
Right, I got him right behind me. Yeah, Frankie's monster and Einstein.
So I just want to go into people after a brain injury often feel like a sense of loss. And can you talk a little bit about the Einstein versus Frankenstein dynamics of the brain?
Sure. Listen, it's first and foremost normal after an injury to have a lot of, maybe it's emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, mental pain and anguish. And there's also going to be, this Frankenstein's monster part of the brain that I call that is going to have a lot of negative self-talk. What's going to happen to me? Will my life be the same? I'm having these disconnects between, what I'm thinking and feeling, what I'm doing and seeing, and so as you can imagine, this beautiful brain of ours, is obviously protected by our skull, but it's very, very sensitive and it's very, very fragile and it's very, very powerful. And I like to liken it, if you were to damage a computer, whatchamacallit, not hardware, the software and the motherboard. If you were to damage the motherboard, it wouldn't function the same way. And unless the motherboard and the circuits were fixed or replaced, it just wouldn't work the same. So I think the first part, when somebody's experiencing, either decline, because of age, Alzheimer's, dementia, and any other cognitive decline, but a traumatic brain injury, it's like things aren't firing the same way, and the connections may be lost, and it's a highly complex organism, I call it, not an organ. So that's kind of like the challenging stuff because an impact of any kind has material damage that's been done. Part one of the story. So most people, start to lose, different aspects of their brain's functionality. So depending on the injury, if it was in the prefrontal cortex or the occipital lobe or the parietal lobes or any one of the other, parts of our brain, different functions are going to be injured, no differently than if you are playing a sport or even you're driving your car and you slam your left shoulder, right? You're going to have, pain and discomfort here. And depending on the severity of it, your arm may not work as well. Like I'm dealing with a torn rotary cuff muscle right now, or partially torn. I can't do weights right now with my left arm. Well, why don't we just say, okay, that's my physical body, and depending on the injury, now it's my brain, right? So that's that part. And here's the good news, and we discussed this a little bit before together, is if we thought of the brain, as this organism, and within this organism, there's, what I like to call our neuromuscles, right? If let's say one of the neuromuscle areas were damaged, could I, through what I call is Innercise, and I know you do some great, I call what you do Innercises to train the brain, could our brain with time heal? Check mark, yes. Could our brain create new roads, neurodes, but new roads, pathways to doing the same thing that we were able to do before, maybe with a different part of the brain? Check, yes. So then the question becomes, am I going to focus on the damage, the problem, the discomfort, or am I going to focus on the solution to empower myself and my $100 billion brain to get back to operating at as much capacity that is possible based on my injury? Like, I've had injuries before. I've ripped my right shoulder. I can't use it as well as before, but I can still use it to ski and to do all the other stuff, but not as good as when I was in my 20s. But I'm also hyperactive, like as far as I do a lot of stuff. So I think the key now becomes, am I going to let my Frankenstein's monster, focus on all the negative, 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 what if negative? Or am I going to shift over to that left prefrontal cortex, what I call the Einstein part of the brain says, okay, hey, listen, John, Brody, Mary, Sally, Sue, yes, you've had an injury. Where do you want to focus your energy and attention? On recovery and getting better and making progress, or on feeling sorry for yourself, feeling like nothing will ever be the same, and refiring and rewiring that neural pattern? Or how do I need to think? What do I need to feel? What do I need to do to make some progress? And that's the difference between operating from what I call Frankenstein's monster part of the brain or Einstein part of the brain, that CEO, executive director that can make decisions and choose versus react.
Beautifully explained. Now, I've heard you say in an interview before that as humans, we move away from pain 100 times, 1,000 times faster than we move towards pleasure. Can you talk a little bit about what the hell's going on there?
So if we go back right in time, right, to maybe cave days, right? We ask ourselves, what have we learned about humanity, humans on Earth? I think 106 or 7 billion humans have walked on Earth, and our brains evolved in these layers. So what we've learned is the hierarchy of how the brain works um, is like this. So number one, if you think about what is the number one priority of the human brain?
It's to
And the
survive.
answer is survival. And right next to survival is safety and security, right? Survival, safety, security, procreation, right? To survive and for the species to thrive. Part one. But again, we're dealing with an organism that's focusing on survival and safety. So if our life is on the line, or we think our life is on the line, we're like hyper alert, right? We're hyper alert. Neurochemicals are released, for us to be able to fight, to freeze, and be cautious, or to run away. Survival, safety. But right there with that is avoidance of pain or discomfort that is either real or imagined. So if we're uncomfortable, I can't think, I can't move my arm, I can't move my leg. This is hard. Oh my God, it's so much focus. I can't focus. Left eye's working, right eye is not. On and on and on and on and on. We're trying to move away from the pain and discomfort. But in order to move away from the pain and discomfort, we tend to think about the pain and discomfort nonstop, which means for most people, in a non-deliberative way, we're firing, right? We're activating the brain cells of negativity, of moving away from pain, discomfort. Sometimes we actually have to move into that to challenge ourselves. But this is where the third hierarchy of the brain, starts to play tricks on us. And now we have this organism that is using about 25-30% of all of the caloric intake that we're taking. And it's an energy miser. It does not want to use energy to do things. And so now, we take a young adult or an adult, that's, functioned normally before. Now she or he has a brain injury, and now I have to learn how to move my hand again. I have to learn how to walk again, think again, talk again, feed myself again, pee alone. And it's all an enormous amount of energy. And our brain doesn't want to use up that energy because of number one and two, survival, safety, and avoidance of pain or discomfort. So now there's this incredible workload that we have to do to get better. And our brain doesn't want to use, energy to do that. So now we're almost having a battle with ourselves. I want to walk, talk, move, do this and that, but I'm lazy naturally, not because I'm like lazy. Our biology is saying conserve energy in case you need to fight, flee, or freeze to protect yourself. And then the fourth part is like, good, once number one, two, and three are taken care of, now it's like, okay, what can I do to gain pleasure? This is like and with a TBI, traumatic brain injury, it's like it's delayed gratification. It's hard now. But here's what I tell all of my students, patients, whatever the case is hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. So do hard now. As soon as you can, do hard. And I can share with you, I've had some friends and family members that have had some injuries and or Alzheimer's and or dementia, including my mother, who was manic depressed. And for years and years and years, she was just declining. She was traumatized when she was 12 years old, mentally, emotionally, physically. And in her 80s, she was in a retirement home, just sitting like a vegetable in her wheelchair.
Yeah.
And one day on these trips, because I live in San Diego, she lived in Montreal. I went to Montreal to see her for 2 weeks, and my sister, brother, and I rotated. And I go, "Hey, Mom, how are you?" She goes, "Okay." "Mom, it's so good to see you. Mwah, mwah, kiss, kiss." "Hi." "Hey, Mom, I'm trying to change her physiology." She's like, non-responsive. I said, "Mom, like, can you just do me a favor? Put your hands on, just do this 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. She goes, "No." She gets angry. I said, "Okay, Mom, just one hand. 1, 2, no." I said, "Mom, come on. Just like a little bit." "No." I said, "Do you love me?" She goes, "Of course I love you." I said, "You just do me one favor, please, just one favor." "What?" I said, "Take your left hand, since you're left-handed, which she is, take one finger, only one finger for me, and move the finger one time like this." So she's angrily looking at me. She takes her finger, Brody. She goes, like angry, right? I said, "Oh, Mom, now the other 4 fingers are lonely. Just do the other 4. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She got all 5. I said, "Oh, now your right hand is lonely." Now she's getting a little angry, but she's got a little motive for action. So she does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And she did 10 fingers when she didn't want to. And I said to her, I said, "Hey, now that you've done 10 fingers, raise your hands up above your head." "No, stop it. Leave me alone." "Fine, Mom. That's great for today." By the end of 2 weeks, Brody, fingers, hands moving like this, hands above her head, knee being lifted up from the wheelchair down, knee down over a 2-week period of time. By the 13th day, 12th or 13th day, we were having her in her walker going up and down the hall in her retirement home. She hadn't done that in years. Now, why do I start there? Because it was really hard for her to get to even one finger. But we got that done. And then over 2 weeks, she was walking one time up and down the hall. Within 90 days, my mother was on the recumbent bike in her mid-80s before she died. She was on the recumbent bike downstairs with her caregiver videoing me and her to show me she's on the bike doing a little bit of motion now with her hands and her feet. Depression went away. Everything changed. Then she got COVID, and 5 days later she died. But what's the point I'm trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is, do something.
That's astounding of how malleable the brain really is, even in that age that it got her moving. And I think we all can relate when you get up in the morning, some mornings you're just like, ah,
Yeah.
I wonder what the heck is going on with the brain. Like we all wake up in the morning and feel pissed off sometimes. What's going on there, you know?
Listen, it could have been a dream. It could have been something that was going on when you woke up in your environment. You could have had a shitty night's sleep. Um, and let's say we do feel that way. Let's say we do. Now let's start to understand a little bit about the biochemistry, right? The neurochemistry, the biochemistry. So let's say I wake up and I feel, awful. I'm tired, didn't sleep well, I'm stressed out, whatever your reason is. And you woke up in a state. And that state is producing this feeling and emotion and thought pattern. Now, here's the question that I think is worthy of asking. Could I, if I wanted to, just could I, if I wanted to, could I take 1 minute or half a minute, and regardless of that state, could I ask myself a question? Even though I'm not feeling great today because of blank, blank, and blank, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? Could I? And let's say you said, well, of course I could. And then let's say you did that and you said, well, I'm grateful that I actually woke up this morning. That's kind of nice because some people didn't.
Yep.
I'm grateful that, oh, I'm actually breathing and my heart is beating and I can move my hands and feet. And I'm grateful, that my husband, my wife, my kids, my friends, my job, whatever, is actually, really, really good. Now, is it true that just in doing that little thing, I would change the firing of the neurons in my brain? And since I was focusing on some things I was grateful for, would I possibly be releasing a little bit of dopamine, the reward neurochemical, because I'm now thinking about something I'm grateful for. And as I think about something I'm grateful for, I'm releasing the neurotransmitters and the hormones associated with that thought. Now, all of a sudden, the tired, angry neurons that I woke up with, they shut down. Right? And then the new neurons with the neurochemistry that activate, because of those neurons, they activate. And then what if I said, yeah, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm a little bit angry. And that's part like step 2. And then I asked myself, like, what kind of a day would I love to have? Do I want my day to start off and finish off being angry? Or do I start off being angry, being what is right now, which I accept? It's me, I accept it. And do I want to have a better day? Do I want to feel a little bit better? Do I want to have a little bit more energy? Well, yeah, I want that one. I said, great. Well, what's one little thing I could do right now just to move towards that instead of allowing this pattern that I woke up with, for whatever reason, to run my life? And if I just did that in the first literally 90 seconds of the day, and what if I committed to doing that practice, right? Because practice makes permanent. So practice, I did that for 30 days, 90 seconds. Could I possibly shift my physiology, my mental, emotional, physiological, physical, and maybe even spiritual state into moving towards one thing, towards what I want for that day, that morning, that hour? And could I train my brain? No matter how I wake up, I'm going to smile, be grateful, and ask myself, what is one thing I'm going to do to get this day going the way I want versus maybe my dreams took me there? And now who's in control? You. Now you're using your brain better versus allowing your brain to maybe develop disempowering, negative, and in some cases, destructive patterns and habits. And if I build empowering, constructive, positive patterns deliberately, the habits will then build me deliberately.
And so I've heard you speak about habit creation, and then it's not necessarily the amount of time, it's just the repetition of that, like 90 seconds we're talking about here.
Let's start with 90 seconds. If 90 seconds is too much, start with 60 seconds. If that's too much, start with 30. If that's too much, start with 5 seconds. 5 seconds of deliberately focusing on what you want versus what you don't want, deliberately focusing on a language pattern that empowers you versus a language pattern or self-talk that disempowers you. 5 seconds of feeling positive, energetic, happy, grateful is better than zero. And if I just did 5 seconds or 30 seconds for 30 days, then 60 days, then 100 days, do you remember rule number 3 of the brain? Conserve energy. Well, if I did the repetition, our brain is very, very smart. It says, you keep doing this thing. Let me just create this automatic pattern that you don't have to think about doing this thing. I'll just have you do this thing. That's called automaticity. So now we're using the science or neuroscience of neuroplasticity, firing and wiring specific sequences of brain cells connecting together. And then through spaced repetition, we reinforce the pattern. We reinforce the emotion we want. And if we take a little bit of action towards what we just said or felt, now I've got this trifecta of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that are now coalescing and reinforcing a pattern. And if I do that long enough, the pattern then starts to build itself. And that's what I call as an empowering, constructive, positive pattern. Now I am building me deliberately. That's called conscious, deliberate evolution of oneself.
And now, so why is visualization by itself not enough? Because there's a study that really empowered me in my recovery was a piano. There was a 5 finger stroke, and there was a group A and group B. The group A only imagined doing the piano stroke, and group B actually did the 5 finger piano stroke, and there were similar neurological changes. Repeating that over 5 days for 2 hours at a time. So visualization is changing the brain, but
Sure.
the emotionalization anchors it.
Yeah. So, if you think about what are emotions, it's energy in motion. So can I increase the amplitude of my 100 trillion cells in my body? When you go to a movie in a theater or you watch Netflix or something, don't you go up and down and flow with the energy of the actors or actresses or the scene?
Sometimes too much.
Right. So the energy, right? Why not deliberately use all of the tools? So when we use self-talk, we activate, one part of the brain, right? The language centers of the brain. When we emotionalize, we bring forth another few actors to the play, my energy and motion or my limbic system. When I close my eyes and I visualize, visualization is a simulation. So now I'm talking, feeling, imagining, activating the occipital lobe, the biggest part of the brain, right? And, visualization is a simulation. So my brain is simulating what it is that I want to do or I'm doing. And then if I take action and do it as well, that's like adding another layer to it. And there's several different studies with free throws, with golfers, with piano players. There's one with people who lifting weights in their mind. They'll achieve 70% of the same strength gain as somebody who is actually lifting the weight. But because somebody's lifting the weight and there's more emotion involved, there's more stress involved, there's more neurochemicals involved, they build more muscle. And so here's the question. If the brain is made up of, I'm going to go back to what I've shared before, like neuromuscles, right? Is like we can isolate a bicep muscle, we can isolate self-talk, we can isolate, an emotion. But what if I did self-talk and emotion and visual and behavior? Isn't that going to give me like almost like a in weight training? You could do a superset, right? You could do like bicep curl, bicep pull-ups. You could do a variety of different exercises, one after the other, and that's called a superset. And now you're coming at the muscle from a variety of different angles. And well, why not do the same in your mind? Why not use all the different members of your brain, right? The different parts of your brain, like a different part of an orchestra, right? Why not engage as many members of your brain to help you, whether it's heal your traumatic brain injury. Every day, I visualize my shoulder getting better and healing. I'm doing all the medical stuff. I'm doing all the physiotherapy stuff, but I'm also doing the internal stuff because as I visualize my shoulder being perfect, it heals faster and it helps and it helps and it helps and it helps. So it's to me, it's a matter of how do I use all of the different tools that I have available to me to achieve whatever outcome I want. And here's something that please use with your patients, your clients, your friends, your teaching. I always ask my students, I said, give me a goal that you have. Okay, let's say it's healing from X, traumatic brain injury, or achieving any goal. And I say to them, are you interested in the outcome that you want, or are you committed to the outcome that you want? And people ask me, what's the difference? And listen, when you're interested, you're going to come up with stories and reasons and excuses why you can't. You're going to say you're lazy, you don't feel like it. You might have a story or something's going to be in your way. But if you're committed, you'll be bigger than the stories. You'll be bigger than the reasons. You'll be bigger than the fear. You'll be bigger than the pain. You'll be bigger than all of that because you are. So based on that framework, which are you? Are you interested or are you committed to outcome X? And almost inevitably, everybody says, well, I'm committed. I said, awesome. That's like question one. Then I go to question number two. And I'm going to give you 4 options to answer question number 2. So question 1 was 2 answers. Question number 2 is 4 answers. As it relates to the outcome you want, are you currently doing none of what it takes, some of what it takes, most of what it takes, or freaking everything it takes? Which one are you doing? Like, is your behavior matching the outcome you want? If it's everything it takes, here's what I can just about guarantee you. You are going to get significant progress and you are going to make, insanely amazing headway. If you're doing most of what it takes, you'll achieve most of the outcome. Some of what it takes, you'll achieve some of your outcome. None of what it takes, you are going to be extremely frustrated, miserable, and angry.
True, true. What would you say to the environment is so seductive at times that let's just say that you're 45 years old and all of the cards seem stacked against you, that you're living in a country with a terrible economy, you're having issues financially, you're kind of stuck into a corner. and the environment around you and the people surrounding you is so seductive. How do you begin to empower yourself if the outside world just seems like complete chaos?
Buddha was walking from village to village saying prayers for the different villagers. And as he was walking, they were feeding him and giving him rice and giving him food to take. And this man comes alongside Buddha and starts calling him names and denigrating him and telling him he's a false, a fraud, a this, a that for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And Buddha's calmly smiling, going from village to village, doing what he's committed to doing, is to give love and prayers. And as a result, people were taking care of him. And after about 6 hours of doing this, this guy says, "Aren't you going to respond to me?" And Buddha stops and says, "Sure." And he says to the man, he says, "If a man offers you a present and you choose not to accept the present, to whom does the present belong?"
Thyself.
So listen, do you want the economy to hold you back? Focus on that. Frankie's Monsters, that play. Oh, you want your current circumstances to hold you back from using your $100 billion brain? That's a choice you have. Oh, the elections. Oh, not those. Your husband, your wife, your friend, all of that stuff. As much as it may be true and real, there's only one thing that differentiates you and me and anybody else who watches or listens, between a horse and a pig. Choice. So which will you, madam, sir, my friend, choose? To focus on all the crap and shit, or even your present circumstances that were caused because of your past thinking and behaviors? Or are you going to take your $100 billion brain that has helped our history of species, okay, for 150,000 years survive through stuff way freaking worse than what you're going through, so that you can actually be here breathing? Are you going to take this brain and focus on not having enough money, or use every waking hour focusing on what are my highest income producing activities? What are my highest impact producing activities? Which are you going to focus on? Because energy flows to where attention goes. Let me repeat that. Energy flows to where attention goes. So why not use that Einstein part of your brain on solving the darn problems that you have, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, financial? And here's what I can promise you. There are people way freaking worse off than you are that are doing more than you are, because they're placing their energy and attention and focus, and yes, their actions, towards solutions versus problems.
I love the $100 billion, gazillion-dollar brain idea. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's just so true. And I want to bring up this really cool study that recently that blew me away. That there was recently a map of every single neuron in the adult brain. So like that means we're closer to understanding the brain's complexities. Like, how do you think understanding the more that we understand this, what could this lead to?
Yeah, I remember a study came out in the last 2 weeks. It was a mouse's brain, not a human's,
Oh,
but
okay.
maybe you're right. And there's a great picture of it as well online, but maybe human. I will actually look for that today. And if you found it, please send it to me.
Okay.
Listen, we have more neurons and connections. Every neuron in our brain, which is about 85 billion for an adult, has anywhere from 7 to 10,000 connections. But in the cerebellum, it has up to 100,000 connections. So they say that there's more connections in the human brain that there are stars in our Milky Way galaxy. which is trillions of stars. So you want to talk about if you imagine this for a moment, imagine all of the phone networks in the world right now and all the connections they have, every cell phone, every landline, everything, right? Um, your brain, it like dwarfs that by a million, maybe more. So first and foremost, here's what I want to remind people of. You don't have a mortgage on your brain. You don't have to pay rent, but you do have to take care of it. And imagine I gave you, I've used this in the last week with some students of mine. I said, imagine that I gave you the car, the yacht, or the jet of your dreams. Just imagine. And you washed it, and you took really great care of it. It looked beautiful. And then I said, you're great, get in there and either fly or yacht around or drive. And you got in there and you realized there's no fuel.
Not good. You ain't not going anywhere.
You ain't going anywhere. It's like staying in the hangar or in the dock. And so every one of us has this, like say, $100 billion brain, and you own it. And so here's my question for you. How much time do you invest using it the way it's supposed to be used? You want to drive your car well, you want to use your cell phone well, you want to use a computer well, but what about your own brain? Why not understand? I am not my thoughts, I have thoughts. I am not my emotions, I have emotions. I'm not my feelings, I have feelings. I'm not my behaviors, but I do most of them 95% without really even thinking. Now, are the thoughts, the emotions, and the behaviors moving me towards what I want or not? It's a binary question, right? Yes or no. It's not like kind of. And if the answer is, well, maybe here, but not here, great, let's focus on this. So we're at the precipice of some giant leaps in the next 10 years with AI and brain to computer interface that's going to bring along with it some amazing, amazing highs, but it will also create addictions of biblical proportions because of the hyperstimulation of the emotional center and circuits of the brain. Um, and with every advancement, there's good and bad. Agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, computerized revolution, now the AI revolution, which is here, will give us the most amazing advances in our awareness and understanding. But if you've ever put on a pair of virtual reality goggles and you've experienced virtual reality and or augmented reality, it is a seismic shift forward. So let's say you have a traumatic brain injury. Good news, you'll be able to go into this virtual reality. If you ever watched Star Trek as a kid and you're in the hologram on the hologram deck, well, we're there. We're in that era now,
Yeah.
and that's going to be great for rehab. It'll be great for people with addictions. It'll be great when used that way. But it'll also be great for creating alternative realities where we don't want to do this anymore or as much. So it'll be an interesting dynamic. But the computer brain interface, the people that maybe paralyzed now or partially paralyzed, people that had a TBI, traumatic brain injury, where we can possibly stimulate that part of the brain deliberately through brain stimulation technologies and or computer interfaces and or deliberately imprinting information, activating those neurons. That we're in the era right now.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yeah.
Buckle up because I think there's something going on with children and attention deficit, the deficit of attention disorder at very high levels. I wonder what's going on to the neural networks in the average person, if that's like changed in some way since the advent of social media and more recently ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned with ChatGPT as much yet, because it's a really great tool to upgrade knowledge, skills, get information on demand. It just launched its search engine like Google, so it's going to be a tool to simplify and help us with stuff.
Yes.
Whereas if you're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you are, swiping up, swiping down, crossing left, crossing right, watching stuff. You are doing to your brain, what sugar does to your blood. You're getting these spikes of dopamine, and dopamine is not just a reward neurochemical. It's bigger. It's more of an anticipatory neurochemical. So we anticipate what's going to happen when we turn split, a swipe left or right, up or down. It's the brain anticipating, and then it's releasing this dopamine. And if we have a reserve of dopamine that's maybe 10 units, and let's say by 10 a.m. in the morning, kids woken up with their cell phone, or even an adult, and they're watching stuff that's funny, that's distracting them, that they're swiping left, swiping right, they're getting this reward or anticipating a reward. What happens is they go into dopamine depletion mode. And then the brain, okay, is going to start being a little bit sad. You might feel a little depressed, depression of the system, right? And in many cases, if there's suppression, and the suppression or the depression is activating the reward signals to get feeling better, now you've got this almost addictive flows of up and down addictions where you may not want to communicate with other kids. You may not want to communicate with your spouse or your friend because you're either dopamine depleted or serotonin depleted or oxytocin depleted. And now you're in a negative balance. And so now you're going to look for ways to feel better. And a lot of people will do what? They'll just keep going back to the source of distraction and depletion. And so we have a major issue on our hand where we're getting this instant gratification, and that's going to create this, addictive personality to that dopamine hit. So we become addicted to the dopamine.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's had addictive tendencies, for me, it's about channeling that addiction.
Yeah.
Is that I used to focus on drugs and alcohol and negative stuff, but now my addiction is channeled towards good things. And believe it or not, good things are starting to happen to me
I
because of
love it.
it.
What's interesting is I have this theory that every one of us is an addict. Now, some of our addictions are constructive, empowering, and positive, and build our lives up. And some are destructive, negative, and disempower us and tear our lives down. So let's assume, just for argument's sake, that that's true. Okay. I've abused drugs when I was a kid. I was an alcoholic. I was a sugaraholic. And I rewired my own brain. I haven't had a drink in 15 years. Out of 18, I haven't had a drink in 16 and a half. I didn't drink for a year and a half. Then I drank one drink and drank for a year and a half. And I just rewired my brain talking about the stuff that I teach in Innercise and my app, etc. I used to be a sugar addict. Like I wouldn't eat a cookie. I would eat 7, 8. I wouldn't eat a piece of pie. I wouldn't do that. When I was a kid in my teens, if a friend of mine said, "Hey, you want to do a line?" I go, "Well, how much do you have?" Because I would never want to do one line. I wouldn't want to drink one drink. Like one is too many and 10 weren't enough. So I discovered that to be my personality, my whatever. And I said, okay, how do I shift to create empowering, positive addictions that build my life up? I was 243 pounds, borderline diabetic, 33% body fat, hypertensive, fatty liver. And I stopped drinking alcohol and focused on a six pack at 50 and a six pack at 60. I'm working on an eight pack for 65.
Yeah.
By taking the same energy, focus, thoughts, emotions, and channeling it to what I want to trade my life for and what will make my life the masterpiece I want it to be based on my values and my rules. So I know how powerful the brain is. I've helped individuals that have been paralyzed in the hospital, and the only way to communicate with them is through blinking of the eyes. If they blinked one, you knew it was row one of the alphabet. If they blinked twice, it was row two. So they blinked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a cross, right, for the words. To being able to walk again because they had Guillain-Barré, for example. One of my friends just had a traumatic brain injury. He's a 15-year-old boy that was riding his motocross with a helmet, with all the gear in some fields, came off of the place, got onto the road, and a car slammed into him. He was in a coma for 2 weeks recently, like literally in the last several months, and his kid's walking again now. Because even while he was in the coma, Greg created brain training audios, for him to train his brain while he was in a coma. And they did everything possible, to reactivate his brain. The kid is walking now. He's talking now. They said it's going to take 1.5 to 2 years if he ever woke up. So listen, we're dealing with an extremely beautiful, powerful brain that I seek, like you do, to just share with people that you have the ability to use it a little bit better, to make your life a lot better. But you've got to make a commitment to yourself that you're not going to focus on just the problem. You're not going to focus on the negative, 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 and what you've lost and what's not working, what's not happening. You want to be aware of all that stuff, but think of the word focus, right? If we have general sunlight, why we can warm up our skin, and go to the beach, and it's nice. But if we take that same sunlight, right, and we use a magnifying glass, we could actually, manipulate a magnifying glass to burn a piece of paper by focusing the same energy. Now, if I actually focused it even more into what's known as single photons, the sun, right? The sun's rays are photons. Focus those photons through a magnifying glass, you have more concentrated photons. Concentrate those even more, you have a single photon, and that's, I think, called a laser. With laser, we cut through steel. With magnifying glasses, we can burn paper, a leaf. With general sunlight, we have a nice pan. Same energy. Well, for everybody who's watching or listening, brain, same energy. Functionally, every brain works the same. And of course, when there's a traumatic brain injury, there's impediments. But we can still take the rest of the brain and use it to help us focus, even if it's 10 seconds a day. And then 10 seconds become 11, and 11 become 13, and 13 become 20, and 20 become 21, 22, 23. Then sometimes we go back to 20, but then we get to 25 and 30 and 40, and then we go to a minute, and then we go to 3 minutes. And it takes you making a commitment to using the most powerful, powerful, powerful biocomputer organism called your brain.
Wow, yeah. There's just so many takeaways with focus. Like if there's one skill that anybody can build, just one skill, it's focus right there. As you said, the laser beam. And it brings me on to you talk a lot about self-identity and self-sabotage. So there's been times in my life where I changed my identity and I was doing well, but whether anybody realizes or not, if you're not nipping that in the butt, there's self-sabotage, whether it's big like I did or tiny ones, we're all doing it. So how do you catch that?
Sure. So I'd like to shift back about 60 seconds on somebody saying, the one skill that I would really highly suggest even before focus. I have a body of work, as you know, called Innercise, right? And Innercise number one is called Take Six, Calm the Circuits to deactivate Frankie and activate Einie, right? The Stein cousins. But Innercise number two is called AIA, AIA. What does AIA stand for? It stands for awareness of thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and behaviors and results. Awareness. Now, if I can become aware of my thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and behaviors, which produce my results, without, and this is really, really critical, without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justifying them, just observing, almost like I'm observing an X-ray, right? Like a radiologist. If I can be observing, thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, behaviors, which produce results, and then I could say the I in Aya is intention, regardless of these thoughts, emotions, blah, blah, blah. What's my intention for the next 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, depending on what your capabilities are right now? What's my intention for the next 1 minute? Well, my intention is to be happy. My intention is to focus on one thing I can do. My intention is fill in the blank. My intention is blank. And then we go, okay, so my awareness is this. My intention is this. What is one teeny tiny small action I could take to just move towards that? Now what I'm doing is now I'm deliberately using my brain. And this is something for people to like chew on for a little bit. Is like, you are not your brain. You have a brain. Your brain doesn't think unless you're there. Albert Einstein's brain is in a jar somewhere in Philadelphia, but he ain't there. So his brain's doing shit other than really good for research. So if it is that I have a brain and I can use my brain better, no different, I can increase or decrease my heart rate. I can use my brain better. And if I just take six, calm the circuits, which is to deactivate the stress circuit, the vagus nerve and the sympathetic nervous system, into parasympathetic, which activates the Einstein brain. And then I could do this Innercise number two of awareness, intention, action. I don't care how bad things are. As soon as you are aware of a pattern, you set a new intention and you take a small little action towards what you want, you've interrupted that old pattern.
Mm.
So now the focus is in the awareness, the intention, and one little action. So it's not this high concentration. It's hard for me right now. No. Simple stuff. Simple stuff. If I get my mother to focus on moving one finger, I've just interrupted her pattern of being, debilitated in a wheelchair. And every small little action activates neurons. Good actions lead to more good actions. Bad decisions and actions lead usually to more. So I want to deliberately shift the things that are no longer serving me. And I want to start to develop, as you mentioned before, just this new identity, right? Because my identity is being reinforced every day. But if I could be aware of it and I could just make some small shifts, then I could start to formulate a new identity. I can create some new beliefs, because a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern in the brain. I can develop some self-confidence. I can develop some more certainty. And I can always upgrade my skills. But I have to start off with, like, what is it that I want? versus what is or what I don't want. And if we have some things that we want to move away from, I'm good with that. Write it down. I want to move away from this, but I also want you to move towards something. So we have, this push away from here and pull towards over here. Now I'm going to actually, by focusing on what I don't want, I'll actually release probably a little stress hormone. Good. But then I'll also create, what I do want, which will activate my nucleus accumbens and insula and activate that dopamine anticipatory neurochemical. So I'll have this thrust away from what I don't want with good neurochemicals, which is our fuel, right? And then I'll move towards what I want. So now I have this wonderful cocktail in my brain that will produce new feelings and new behaviors. And let's just do some simple stuff first.
John, it's going on my wall. Because I even as I'm moving towards my goals and my dreams and my aspirations, there's still a little bit of that going on. So if I put that on the wall,
Me
do
too.
that 100, 200 times a day if necessary, you know?
Me too. Listen, every level that you get to, you end up plateauing, which requires a new version of you. So why fight it? Just let's learn the process. If you want to grow and develop and have your best life ever, then put in some effort into it. And then it just becomes part of what you do.
Hmm.
So there's like, what's interesting, and this is part of what, we're dealing with, the hierarchy of the brain. Number three is conserve energy. Every new version of me requires energy. So I have to learn how to override my I don't feel like it self-talk. And you know what I've learned? And if there's anything that anybody remembers from what we've talked about today, it's this. Whenever you hear or feel this self-talk where I don't feel like it, I'm tired, I'm lazy, I don't know how, anything that's disempowering and negative, I want you to just go, yeah, I know, I understand, in a loving way, going, well, let's do a little bit anyway. I know, I get it. I love you. I appreciate you. I know you're tired. I know you didn't sleep well. I know that it's hard. I know that you don't have the knowledge. You don't have the skill. You think you're too old. You think you're too young. You think your situation is really bad. I understand. And let's just do a little bit anyway. You learned that right there. Your life will never be the same.
That's a beautiful way to end this, John. What's going on with you recently? How can people get in touch? The answer changed my life, and he has the answer. So even though I asked him a bunch of questions, you can go check it out here. What's new with you? And
So a couple of things. The answer is specifically for business owners or people who want to have a business. My first New York Times best-selling book is called Having It All. It's around setting and achieving goals. My newest bestseller is called Innercise, the new science to unlock your brain's hidden power. So you can pick up any one of my books on Amazon. Follow me on social media. Take a look at johnassaraf.com. I've got lots of blogs. YouTube, I've got hundreds of videos. And get into my orbit as you're following Brody and his wonderful work. Follow my work and just keep learning, growing, and more importantly, applying what you learn.
well said, my friend. Everyone have a beautiful rest of your day.